The rumble of engines cuts through the dawn silence as 3 black SUVs kick up dust across the desert floor. The vehicles screech to a halt outside a dilapidated roadside bar, its neon sign flickering weakly in the early morning light. Carter's. Inside, a man sweeps broken glass from last night's fight, muscles tensing beneath a faded t-shirt, his movements precise despite the half-empty whiskey bottle on the counter. This is Jake Carter, late 30s, hardened physique, eyes that have seen too much. The bar door swings open. Sunlight silhouettes 5 men entering. Expensive suits despite the desert heat, gold watches, neck tattoos partially visible. Their leader steps forward, scanning the empty bar with cold calculation. "We're closed." Jake doesn't look up from his sweeping. The leader chuckles, running his finger along the dusty bar top. "That's not what we heard. Word is you're under new management now." His accent is thick, Mexican. Jake finally raises his eyes. "Sorry to disappoint you." The leader snaps his fingers and one of his men tosses an envelope onto the bar. $5,000, monthly protection fee. Consider it an investment. In your future. Jake stares at the envelope, then pushes it back. Not interested. The leader's smile disappears. "You misunderstand. This isn't an offer." In one fluid motion, faster than seems possible, Jake grabs the leader's wrist. Neither was mine. The other men reach for weapons, but Jake moves with lethal efficiency. A whiskey bottle smashed into one face, a bar stool swung into another's chest, a brutal elbow strike that shatters a nose. Blood sprays across the worn wooden floor. Within seconds, 4 men lie groaning or unconscious. Jake holds their leader against the bar, arm twisted at a painful angle. "Tell whoever sent you that Carter's doesn't need protection." Jake's voice drops to a dangerous whisper. "And if you ever come back, I'll make sure you leave in pieces." He releases the man, who stumbles backward, clutching his arm. "You're dead, pendejo. You have no idea who you're fucking with." Jake turns, his back resuming his sweeping. "I think we're done here." The men gather their wounded and retreat to their vehicles. As they drive away, Jake's hand trembles slightly as he reaches for the whiskey bottle. A shadow crosses his face, not fear, but recognition. The calm before the storm is over. 6 hours later, the bar is open but nearly empty. A few locals nurse beers, keeping to themselves. Behind the bar, Jake mechanically wipes glasses, eyes constantly moving to the door, anticipating trouble. A woman enters. Elena Martinez, mid-30s, tough, beautiful, with the hardened look of someone who's survived the border town's worst. She slides onto a stool. "Heard you had some visitors this morning." She speaks without looking at Jake. Jake pours her usual tequila without asking. News travels fast. So does trouble. Elena downs the shot. "You know who they were, right?" "Cortes Cartel. They've been moving in all over town. Hardware store, Garcia's restaurant, even the medical clinic." Jake shrugs. "Not my problem." Elena leans forward. "It will be. Nobody says no to them. Last person who tried ended up in pieces along the highway." She pushes her glass forward for a refill. "You may have been some badass soldier once, Jake, but this isn't war. This is business." Jake refills her glass, his jaw tightening. "How? Did you know I was a soldier?" "Small town." She smiles sadly. "Besides, you've got the look. Same as my brother when he came back from Afghanistan. Like you're still waiting for the next explosion." The bar door swings open again. 3 men enter, different from this morning, but with the same predatory confidence. The few customers quickly pay and exit. The tallest one approaches the bar. "Is there a problem, Carter? We heard you disrespected our associates earlier." Jake sets down the glass he's cleaning. "Your associates disrespected my establishment. I simply showed them out." The man laughs. "That's not how this works. You see, El Lobo has taken a special interest in this place. Strategic location, right? By the highway. He leans in. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize, pay double the protection fee, and we're going to use your back room for some of our business ventures. Elena slides off her stool, moving toward the exit. The man grabs her arm. Where you going, Benita? The party's just starting. Something dangerous flickers in Jake's eyes. Let her go. Or what, soldier boy? The man tightens his grip on Elena, who winces. Jake's voice goes flat. 3 seconds to let her go and walk out. The men laugh. One pulls a switchblade. You think you're scary? We kill people for breakfast. 3. The tall one shoves Elena against the wall, drawing a pistol. I'm going to enjoy this. 2. The third man circles behind the bar, crowbar in hand, grinning. 1. Jake moves. The crowbar man goes down first. Jake grabs. His weapon mid-swing, reverses it, and drives it into the attacker's knee. Bone cracks. Screaming. Jake vaults over the bar as the man with the switchblade lunges. Jake sidesteps, grabs the wrist, snaps it backward. The knife clatters to the floor as the man howls. The tall one fires his pistol. The bullet grazes Jake's shoulder. Before he can fire again, Jake is on him. A brutal combination of strikes. Throat, solar plexus, temple. The tall man crumples, gun falling from limp fingers. The entire fight lasts less than 10 seconds. 3 men down. Jake standing in the center, barely breathing hard, blood seeping through his shirt. Elena stares in shock. Jesus Christ, Jake. Jake checks his wound. You should go. It's not safe here. What the hell was that? Where did you learn to fight like that? Jake's eyes are distant, haunted. A lifetime ago. He drags the unconscious men outside, tosses them into their car, and sends it rolling downhill toward the highway with a push. Back inside, Jake pulls out a dusty first aid kit and begins treating. His graze wound. Elena watches, then steps forward to help. You need to leave town, she says quietly. They'll be back with more men. Jake winces as she applies antiseptic. I'm not running. This isn't about pride, Jake. These people don't stop. They'll burn this place to the ground with you in it. Jake stares at the bar, his expression hardening. Let them try. Elena finishes bandaging his shoulder. Why are you so determined to die for this dump? Jake is silent for a long moment. After I got back, from overseas, I had nothing. No purpose, no place. He gestures around the bar. This isn't much, but it's mine, and I'm tired of losing things. Elena studies his face. What did you do? Before this? Jake takes a long pull from a bottle. I killed people. The words hang in the air. I was good at it. Later that night, after closing, Jake sits alone in the darkened bar. He moves to a loose floorboard behind the counter, pries it up, and pulls out a metal lockbox. His hands pause before opening it. Inside, military ID, a folded American flag, medals, and beneath them, a combat knife and Beretta M9 pistol. Jake runs his fingers over the knife's handle, memories washing over him. He closes his eyes. Flash. Muzzle flashes in darkness. Men screaming. A helicopter's spotlight sweeping across desert terrain. Jake snaps back to the present, sweat beading on his forehead. He loads the pistol, checks the action, then straps the knife to his ankle. He knows what's coming. Dawn breaks again. Jake hasn't slept. He sits at a table facing the door, cleaning his pistol. The sound of vehicles approaching makes him look up. Through the window, he sees 5 SUVs pulling up, at least a dozen men pouring out, heavily armed. At their center walks Hector El Lobo Vasquez, 40s, immaculately dressed with the casual confidence of a man accustomed to absolute power. Jake tucks the pistol under the table and waits. Hector enters alone, surveying the bar with distaste. So, this is the place, and you must be Carter. His English is perfect, cultured. "You have caused me considerable inconvenience." Jake says nothing. Hector sits across from him uninvited. "I came personally because I respect strength. My men tell me you are formidable." "Military training, yes?" Jake remains silent. "No matter. Let me be clear about how this proceeds." Hector places a manila envelope on the table. Inside is $20,000. Consider it compensation for your resistance. You will take this money, sign over ownership of this establishment to me, and leave town by nightfall. Jake finally speaks. "And if I don't?" Hector smiles, genuinely amused. "Then I will have my men bring in every person who has ever spoken to you in this town. They will die slowly in front of you before we begin on you." He leans forward. "I've had men skinned alive who betrayed me far less than you have." Jake looks at the envelope, then pushes it back. "This place isn't for sale." Hector's smile doesn't waver. "Everyone has a price, Mr. Carter. It's simply a matter of finding the correct currency." He stands smoothly. "You have until sundown to reconsider. After that, well." He walks to the door, then pauses. "One more thing. To demonstrate my seriousness." He nods to someone outside. Two men drag Elena into the bar, beaten and bloody. They throw her to the floor. Jake rises, hand moving toward his concealed weapon. "Ah." Hector raises a finger in warning. "My men outside have orders. Any aggressive move, and they open fire. This building wouldn't survive such an assault. Neither would most of the people inside it." Jake forces himself to remain still, though every muscle in his body screams to attack. Hector kneels beside Elena, stroking her hair almost tenderly. "She told my men you were once a soldier. Special forces, perhaps? It doesn't matter. Whatever you were, now you're just a man. Remember that." Rises, straightening his suit. "Sundown, Mr. Carter. Choose wisely." Hector exits. His men back out slowly, weapons trained on Jake until they're gone. Jake rushes to Elena, lifting her gently. Her face is bruised, one eye swollen shut. "I'm sorry," she whispers. "They grabbed me outside my house." Jake carries her to a booth, sets her down carefully. "Don't talk. I need to get you to a doctor." Elena grabs his wrist. "There's no time. They meant what they said. They'll kill everyone." She coughs, wincing in pain. "You need to leave town, Jake. Now." Jake stares out the window at the SUVs still parked outside. His expression changes, something cold and lethal settling over his features. "No." His voice is quiet, resolved. "I'm not running anymore." Elena sees the change in him. "What are you going to do? You can't fight them all." Jake moves to the bar, pulls out the lockbox again. This time he removes everything. The pistol, knife, and something else. A satellite phone. I won't have to. He dials a number. After a moment. "Mason, it's Carter. I need that favor now." By midday, the town seems abandoned. Word has spread about the confrontation. Locals stay indoors. Businesses closed. Jake's bar stands like a fortress in the desert heat. Windows now boarded, doors reinforced. Inside, Jake moves with purpose. The bar tables are overturned to create barriers. Bottles of high-proof alcohol are arranged strategically, modified, into improvised weapons. The lockbox now lies empty, its contents distributed on Jake's person. A truck pulls up outside, old, dusty, but military-grade. A man steps out. Mason Reeves, 40s, built like a tank, with the same haunted eyes as Jake. He carries a large duffel bag. Jake lets him in through the back door. "Figured you'd end up in a shitstorm sooner or later," Mason says, dropping the bag on the floor. "Didn't think it'd take this long." Jake clasps his old friend's hand. "I appreciate this." Mason unzips the bag, revealing an arsenal: assault rifles, handguns, tactical gear. Like riding a bike, right? Jake picks up an M4 carbine, checks the action with practiced ease. Something like that. Mason surveys the bar's defenses. Just like Fallujah, except with better booze. His humor fades. You sure about this, Jake? These cartel guys don't play by any rules. Neither did we. Jake begins loading magazines. Mason watches him. This isn't a sanctioned op. There's no extraction plan, no backup. I'm not asking you to stay, Mason scoffs. When have I ever led? You fight alone? He loads his own weapon. So, what's the plan, Lieutenant? Jake spreads a map of the town on the bar. They'll come at sundown. Full force. We need to be ready. Just the two of us against how many? At least 20, probably more. Mason grins. Good. I was worried this would be boring. Jake traces routes on the map. They'll expect us to be defensive, hold up in here. We need to take the fight to them. First. As they talk, Elena returns, her face still bruised but determination in her eyes. She carries a shotgun. Elena, you need to leave, Jake says immediately. She chambers around. They beat me and left me as a message. I get a vote in what happens next. Jake and Mason exchange glances. Can you shoot that thing? Mason asks. My father was a Border Patrol agent. I've been shooting since I was 12. Jake hesitates, then nods. 3 against 20. Still bad odds. Mason laughs. We've had worse. Remember Kandahar? A shadow crosses Jake's face. That didn't end well. For everyone. The moment hangs heavy with unspoken history. Elena breaks the silence. I know people who might help. People who've lost family to Vasquez. They're scared, but if someone showed them it's possible to fight back. Jake considers this. We're not dragging civilians into a war. It's already their war, Elena argues. Has been for years. They just didn't have a leader. Jake stares at his reflection in a broken mirror behind the bar. In it, he sees not the bartender he's been pretending to be, but the warrior he's tried to forget. Get them here by 4, he finally says. We'll see who has the stomach for it. By late afternoon, the bar has become a command center. 8 locals have joined Jake's resistance: shopkeepers, mechanics, ranchers, ordinary people pushed to their breaking point by the cartel's terror. Jake drills them in basic defensive positions, weapon handling. Most have never held anything more dangerous than a hunting rifle. Their hands shake. Fear is palpable. Jake addresses them. What we're doing isn't just about my bar. It's about your homes, your families. Either we stand together now, or we lose everything, one piece at a time. An older man speaks up. We can't win against Vasquez. Even if we survive today, they'll come back with more men. Jake nods. You're right, which is why today isn't about winning. It's about sending a message that this town isn't theirs for the taking. Mason distributes weapons. Remember, aim center mass. Don't try to be heroes. Elena points to the map. Vasquez's men control these 3 buildings now. The hardware store gives them the best vantage point of the main street. Jake studies the positions. We need to limit their mobility first. Mason, you and I will take out their vehicles before they can position them. Mason grins. Just like old times. Jake turns to the civilians. The rest of you will hold defensive positions here. No one engages unless fired upon first. An uneasy silence falls as they check weapons one final time. The sun begins its descent toward the horizon. Jake steps outside alone, surveying the quiet street. In the distance, dust clouds rise, vehicles approaching. Sundown is coming, and with it, war. He takes a deep breath, feeling the familiar calm of pre-battle focus settling over him. For years he's been running from what he is. Now, he embraces it. Jake Carter, the broken bartender, recedes. Lieutenant Jacob Carter, Navy SEAL, steps forward to meet the enemy. The brewing storm is about to break. Night has fallen. The town's main street lies eerily quiet under the glow of sparse streetlights. From his vantage point on the roof of the hardware store, Jake observes Vasquez's convoy approaching. 5 vehicles, heavily armed men visible through windows. He speaks into a handheld radio. They're coming. 5 vehicles, at least 20 men. Mason, you in position? Mason's voice crackles through. Roger that. Southeast corner, as planned. Jake adjusts the sight on his rifle. Elena? In position with Group 2. Everyone's nervous but ready. Jake watches the lead SUV stop about 50 yards from his bar. Remember, we hit them hard and fast. No hesitation. These aren't soldiers. They're predators who've never faced real resistance. The radio goes quiet. Jake steadies his breathing, shifting into the combat mindset that once defined his existence. Below, Hector Vasquez steps from the lead vehicle, straightening his suit jacket. He signals, and his men spread out, taking positions around the bar. Some carry assault rifles, others Molotov cocktails. They move with the confidence of men accustomed to overwhelming their opponents. Jake watches Vasquez check his watch. Exactly sundown. The cartel leader nods to one of his lieutenants who steps forward with a megaphone. Carter, time's up. Come, out now, or we burn this place to the ground with everyone inside. When no response comes, Vasquez gives another signal. 3 men approach the bar with Molotov cocktails, ready to throw. Jake squeezes the trigger. The first shot takes down the lieutenant with the megaphone. Before the body hits the ground, Jake has already shifted targets, eliminating one of the men with the Molotovs. The bottle shatters on the ground, flames spreading harmlessly across the dirt. Chaos erupts. Vasquez's men scramble for cover, searching frantically for the shooter as more precision shots rain down from Jake's position. From the opposite side of the street, Mason opens fire, creating a deadly crossfire. The cartel members, caught in the open, suffer heavy casualties in the first 30 seconds. Vasquez dives behind his SUV, shouting orders. Some of his men manage to regroup, returning fire toward the hardware store. Bullets shatter the windows. Around Jake, forcing him to pull back. Elena and her group, positioned inside surrounding buildings, open fire on cartel members trying to flank Jake's position. The carefully orchestrated ambush tears through Vasquez's forces. Realizing they've been trapped, Vasquez orders a retreat. His men pile into the remaining vehicles, some left behind in the chaos. As they speed away, Jake signals to Mason. Now, Mason triggers the remote detonator. The road ahead of the fleeing vehicles erupts as improvised explosives tear through the pavement. The lead SUV swerves violently, rolling onto its side. The others skid to a halt, boxed in. Jake speaks into the radio. Phase 2, move in. Elena and the townspeople emerge from their positions, weapons trained on the disabled vehicles. Mason approaches from the flank, rifle ready. Jake descends from the hardware store, walking calmly toward the overturned SUV. Inside, Vasquez is pinned, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. His remaining men, realizing they're surrounded, drop their weapons. Jake rips open the SUV door, dragging Vasquez out onto the street. The cartel leader's designer suit is torn and bloody, his arrogance replaced by genuine fear. You made a mistake. Coming here, Jake says, his voice deadly calm. Vasquez spits blood. You think this is over? You're dead. Your friends are dead. This whole town is dead. Jake kneels beside him. Tell your bosses this town is off limits. Anyone who comes here looking for trouble will find it. You don't give orders to the cartel, Vasquez snarls. Jake presses his pistol against Vasquez's temple. I just did. For a moment, it seems Jake might pull the trigger. Mason watches, tense. The townspeople look on, some eager for bloodshed, others horrified by the violence they've participated in. Jake finally pulls the gun away. Get out of my town. and don't come back. Stands, gesturing for the others to let Vasquez and his surviving men go. They stagger to the one functional vehicle remaining, piling in. As they drive away, Vasquez locks eyes with Jake through the rear window, a silent promise of retribution. DT. Townspeople erupt in nervous cheers. For the first time in years, they've stood against the cartel and won. Jake doesn't join the celebration. He knows better. "This isn't over," he tells Mason quietly. "Not even close." Dawn breaks over the bar. Inside, the resistance fighters have gathered, drinking, bandaging wounds, riding the adrenaline high of survival. 8 of Vasquez's men lie dead in the street. The town lost no one, though 2 civilians suffered minor wounds. Jake stands apart, cleaning his weapons methodically. Mason approaches with 2 beers. "Just like old times," Mason says, offering one. "Except we usually had better equipment." Jake takes the beer but doesn't drink. "And better odds. You think they'll come back tonight?" Jake shakes his head. "No. Vasquez needs to regroup, report to his superiors. He'll come back with overwhelming force." "How long do we have?" 2 days, maybe 3. Mason studies his old friend. "We should leave. All of us. You made your point. Running won't solve anything. They'll find us, or they'll punish whoever's left behind." Jake finally sips his beer. "Besides, I'm done running." Across the room, Elena tends to an injured townsman. She catches Jake watching her and walks over. The town's talking about what happened, she says. "Some are calling you heroes. Others say you've doomed us all." Jake's expression remains neutral. "Both might be right." Elena's hand brushes his arm. "My brother would have been proud to fight alongside you." Jake's eyes soften, briefly. "Your brother. Afghanistan, you said?" Elena nods. "3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, Helmand Province." "Good unit," Jake says quietly. "I worked with them once." The moment is interrupted as a young man bursts through the door. "Trucks coming, at least a dozen." The room erupts in panic. People grab weapons, knock over chairs in their haste. Jake raises his hand for silence. "Everyone stay calm. Mason, take a look." Mason moves to the window using binoculars. After a moment, he lowers them, looking puzzled. They're not cartel, military-style vehicles, but unmarked, professional, moving in a tactical formation. Jake takes the binoculars. Christ! He recognizes the approach pattern, the non-standard vehicles. They're contractors. "Mercenaries?" Elena asks. "High-end private military." Jake's expression darkens. "Vasquez escalated faster than I expected." "How many?" Mason asks. "At least 20 operators, former special forces by the look of their movement." Jake sets down the binoculars. "These aren't street thugs. They're trained killers." The civilians exchange terrified glances. Jake addresses them. "Anyone who wants to leave, go now. Head west, stay off the main roads. These men aren't here for you, they're here for me." No. One moves, an older man stands. "This is our town, too. We started this fight together." Murmurs of agreement spread through the room, though fear remains evident on every face. Jake nods, touched by their courage. "Then we need to change our strategy. They'll be expecting a frontal defense. We need to split up, use the town's layout against them." He quickly divides them into 4 groups, assigning sectors. Mason will lead one team, Elena another. Jake will operate independently to draw attention. Remember, these men are professionals. Don't engage unless you have a clear advantage. Jake distributes the remaining ammunition. Communication is key. If your position is compromised, fall back immediately. As the groups prepare to move out, Jake pulls Elena aside. "Your team has the least experienced fighters. Stay hidden, only engage as a last resort." Elena's expression hardens. "I can handle myself." "I know. That's why I need you to keep them alive. Jake holds her gaze. Promise me you won't take unnecessary risks. Something passes between them. Concern beyond tactical necessity. Elena nods. I promise. The teams disperse into the town, taking covered routes to their assigned positions. Jake remains behind briefly, checking his weapons one final time. Mason lingers at the door. You know what this means, right? Vasquez bringing in contractors. Jake nods grimly. He has something valuable here, something worth protecting with top-tier muscle. Or someone high up wants you dead badly enough to spend serious money on it. Jake clips additional magazines to his vest. Either way, we're about to find out. The mercenaries move through town with professional precision, clearing buildings systematically. Unlike Vasquez's men, they operate with military discipline, covering each other's movements, maintaining communication, leaving nothing to chance. Their leader, Richards, 40s, weathered face, eyes that have seen combat across every continent, directs the operation from a mobile command center established in the town's small hotel. Maps spread across a table show the town divided into grid sectors. Team 2, report. Richard speaks into a headset. Sectors D through F, clear. No resistance encountered. Richards marks the map. Team 3, approaching the target location. Now. No sign of Carter or his people. Richards frowns. He hadn't expected Carter to abandon the bar. The intelligence suggested he would make a stand there. All teams maintain protocol. Carter has Special Forces training. Expect ambush tactics. Clear every room twice. As the words leave his mouth, an explosion rocks the eastern part of town. One of his team's vehicles erupts in flames. Team 4, report. Richards barks. Static, then. Under fire. Taking casualties. Unknown number of hostiles. Another explosion, this time to the west. Richards curses, realizing they've been drawn into a guerrilla campaign. He quickly reorganizes his teams, sending reinforcements to both locations. Across town, Jake watches through a rifle scope as the mercenaries split their forces. The trap is working. He keys his radio. Phase 1 complete. Mason, Elena, begin harassment operations. No direct engagement. Jake moves silently through an abandoned building, emerging onto a rooftop with a clear view of Richard's command post. He counts 8 men guarding the hotel. Too many for a direct assault. Below, one of Mason's teams triggers another diversionary explosion. A parked car rigged with fuel and fertilizer. The blast draws more of Richard's men away from the hotel. Jake descends to street level, moving, through back alleys toward the hotel. He encounters 2 mercenaries searching a store. They never see him coming. Quick, silent kills with his combat knife. Jake takes their radio, listening to their communications. Richard's voice comes through, increasingly frustrated as his teams report encountering traps but no direct contact with the enemy. Fall back to the hotel, Richards finally orders. They're thinning us out. We regroup and move as a single unit. Jake smiles grimly. Exactly as he'd hoped. As the mercenaries converge on the hotel, Jake radios Mason and Elena. All teams, final. Positions. Prepare for Phase 3. Mason's voice comes through. Jake, we're taking fire at the south barricade. Elena's team is pinned down. Jake's expression changes. Elena, report. No response. Elena, come in. Static, then her voice, strained. We're trapped in the old church. 3 men down. They've got us surrounded. Jake changes plans immediately. Mason, continue with Phase 3. I'm going for Elena. That's on the other side of town, Mason protests. You'll never make it through their lines. Just keep them occupied at the hotel. Jake is already moving, sprinting through back streets, staying in shadows. Richards, tracking the radio communications, smiles coldly. They're making mistakes now. Team 5, converge on the church. Carter is heading there. At the church, Elena. and 4 townspeople exchange fire with mercenaries from behind overturned pews. Their ammunition is running low. 2 of her people are wounded, another dead. "We need to find another exit," she tells them, searching desperately for options. The stained glass windows are too small for escape. The front doors are covered by enemy fire. The back entrance is their only hope, but reaching it means crossing exposed ground. Elena makes a decision. "I'll draw their fire. When I do, you 3 get the wounded out the back." Before they can protest, she breaks from cover, firing her shotgun toward the mercenaries outside. Bullets tear through the church walls around her as she dives behind a stone column. The distraction works. Her team drags the wounded toward the back exit. Outside, Jake approaches the church from the rear, taking out a mercenary sentry with a silent headshot. He can hear the gunfire inside, see muzzle flashes through the windows. He enters through the back door, finding Elena's team struggling with the wounded. "Where's Elena?" he demands. They point toward the front of the church. Jake helps them secure. The exit route then moves toward the gunfire. Elena is pinned down, her shotgun empty. The mercenaries are advancing methodically, closing in for the kill. Jake moves along the church's balcony, getting an angle on the attackers. He opens fire, dropping 2 immediately. The others scramble for cover, caught in the crossfire. Elena seizes the opportunity, retrieving a fallen mercenary's weapon and joining the counterattack. Together, she and Jake force the remaining attackers into retreat. Jake reaches Elena's position, checking her for wounds. "Are you hit?" She shakes her head, breathing hard. "I'm okay. My team?" "Safe. Getting the wounded out." Jake glances toward the door. "We need to move. More will be coming." As they start toward the exit, the church doors burst open. Richards enters with 4 men, weapons raised. "Jake Carter," Richards calls, his voice echoing in the sacred space. "I've heard a lot about you." Jake pushes Elena behind a column, whispering, "When I engage them, get to the exit." Elena grips his arm. "Not without you." Richards advances slowly. "Your reputation is well deserved. You've cost me 8 good men today, but it ends now." Jake calculates angles, distances, possibilities. The odds are bad. "You know what's funny, Carter?" Richards continues. "Vasquez didn't hire us to kill you. He hired us to capture you. Seems you've got someone's attention, someone important." Jake's eyes narrow. This is unexpected. Richards gestures and his men spread out. "Make this easy on yourself. Surrender, and the girl lives. Resist, and we kill her first, then take you anyway." Jake looks at Elena, then back at Richards. Slowly, he rises from cover, hands raised. "Jake!" "No," Elena hisses. "Smart choice." Richards smiles, motioning his men forward. As they approach, Jake's hands move in a blur. A hidden knife finds the throat of the nearest mercenary. Jake uses the dying man as a shield, firing the mercenary's weapon at the others. Elena joins the fight, shooting one of Richards' men in the back as he focuses on Jake. Richards himself proves more formidable, dodging Jake's fire and returning accurate shots that force Jake behind a pillar. Marble chips explode around him as bullets impact. Jake, running low on ammunition, locks eyes with Elena across the church. A silent communication passes between them. She nods slightly. Jake breaks from cover, drawing Richards' fire. Elena circles behind, approaching Richards from his blind spot. As Jake dives between pews, Elena closes in. Richards senses her too late. He turns, but Elena is already upon him, driving a broken chair leg into his side. He staggers, firing wildly. Jake sees his opportunity. He charges Richards, tackling him to the ground. They grapple brutally, Richards' military training evident as he matches. Jake move for move. Elena tries to help, but catches a backhanded strike that sends her sprawling. Richards pins Jake, pressing a knife toward his throat. Nothing personal, Carter. Just business. Jake headbutts him, breaking Richard's nose. The mercenary leader reels back, momentarily stunned. Jake presses the advantage, reversing their positions and gaining control of the knife. Who wants me? Alive? Jake demands, pressing the blade against Richard's throat. Richards laughs through bloody teeth. You really don't know, do you, why they're so interested in this backwater town? A gunshot rings out. Richard's body jerks, blood blooming on his chest. He stares at Jake in surprise, then goes limp. Jake looks up to see Elena holding a smoking pistol. Behind her, Mason appears with several townspeople, weapons ready. The rest are retreating, Mason reports. Looks like we've won round 2. Jake rises slowly, staring down at Richard's body. He said they weren't sent to kill me. They wanted me alive. Mason frowns. Why? I don't know. Jake looks troubled. And he knew something about the town. Something important. The church falls silent as they consider the implications. Their victory suddenly feels incomplete, shadowed by unanswered questions. Elena approaches Jake, touching his wounded arm gently. You came for me. Jake meets her eyes. I made a promise. The moment stretches between them, something unspoken passing. In their gaze, Mason clears his throat. We should move, in case they regroup. Outside, smoke rises from various parts of town. Bullet holes riddle buildings. Bodies lie in the streets. Most mercenaries, but also 2 townspeople who joined the resistance. The survivors gather around Jake, looking to him for direction. Their expressions mix pride, fear, and growing uncertainty. They've won another battle. But at what cost? And what comes next? Jake surveys the damage, the casualties. His expression hardens with resolve. We've hurt them twice now. Next time, they won't send hired guns. He looks at each person in turn. Next time, they'll come with everything they have. A woman speaks up. Then maybe we should leave while we can. Jake shakes his head. Running isn't an option anymore. We've crossed a line. They'll hunt down everyone involved. He looks at the devastation around them. Besides, this is our home, and it's time we took it back permanently. Mason exchanges, glances with Elena. Both recognize the shift in Jake, the bartender receding completely, the warrior fully emerged. What's the plan? Mason asks. Jake looks toward the highway leading south, toward the border. We take the fight to them, hit them where they're vulnerable. Make the cost of coming back too high. The townspeople murmur, some with approval, others with apprehension. This isn't just about my bar anymore, Jake continues. It's about every business they've extorted, every person they've threatened. It's about making sure they never control this town again. His words rally the group, stirring a sense of possibility where before there was only fear. As they begin moving back toward the bar to regroup, Elena falls in beside Jake. You're planning something specific. I can see it in your eyes. Jake nods slowly. Richards mentioned something valuable here, something worth sending professionals to secure. He looks at her intently. What does Vasquez have in this town that's so important? Elena considers. They've been moving more product through here recently, using local businesses as fronts, but that's nothing special. They do that all along the border. Jake's eyes narrow in thought. It's something else. Something bigger. He turns to Mason. We need intel. Vasquez's operations, his headquarters, his supply routes. Mason grins. I might know someone who can help with that. Former intelligence officer lives about 40 miles north. Owes me a favor. Jake nods. Get what you can. We have a day, maybe 2, before they regroup. The 3 of them walk ahead of the group, already planning the next phase. Behind them, the town bears the scars of battle. Buildings damaged, blood staining the streets. But there's a new energy in the air, a sense that perhaps the cartel's grip can be broken. As they reach the bar, a massive explosion rocks the building. The force throws them to the ground as flames erupt from the structure. Jake shields Elena with his body as debris rains down around them. When he looks up, his bar, his home, is engulfed in fire, burning fiercely against the darkening sky. Mason helps them to their feet. Timed charges, they must have planted them during the fighting. Jake watches his life's work burn, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a cold smile forms on his lips. "Good," he says quietly. Elena looks at him in confusion. "Good." Jake turns to face the group, backlit by the inferno. "They think destroying my bar will break us, make us give up." His voice carries over the roar of the flames. "But they've just freed us to take this fight wherever we need to go." The fire reflects in his eyes, turning them to burning coals. "Now we have nothing left to lose." Mason and Elena exchange glances. The retaliation has begun in earnest, and with it, a transformation in Jake that is both inspiring and terrifying. The broken soldier has found his purpose again, not in defense, but in war. As night falls completely, the bar collapses in on itself, sending sparks spiraling into the sky. The town watches, mesmerized by the destruction and what it represents. The point of no return. The resistance has survived its first true test. But the real battle is just beginning. Dawn breaks over the ruins of Jake's bar, now nothing but smoldering debris and blackened timbers. Jake stands among the ashes, sifting through charred remains with gloved hands. His face is streaked with soot, eyes red from smoke and lack of sleep. Mason approaches, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee from a nearby diner that's serving as their temporary headquarters. "Anything salvageable?" Jake uncovers a half-melted dog tag chain with a single tag still attached. He stares at it for a moment before pocketing it silently. "Nothing that matters." Mason hands him a coffee. "Elena's contact came through. We've got some intel on Vasquez's operation." Jake rises, brushing ash from his clothes. "Let's hear it." They walk to the diner where Elena and the remaining members of their resistance are gathered. The mood is somber. 4 townspeople died in yesterday's battle, with several more injured. Some have fled, but a core group remains, their resolve hardened by loss. Inside, maps and satellite printouts cover the tables. Elena stands at the center, directing people as they prepare weapons and equipment. She nods as Jake enters. "We found something." Elena indicates a warehouse marked on a map, about 10 miles south, just across the Mexican border. "Vasquez's primary distribution center. Everything moves through here before going north." Jake studies the location. "Security." "Heavy," Mason answers. "At least 30 men, rotating shifts. Multiple entry points, all guarded. Motion sensors, cameras." Jake traces the route with his finger. "Crossing the border will be tricky." Elena smiles grimly. "Not if you know the right paths. My father showed me every crossing for 50 miles, when I was a teenager." "Even if we get there, we're outnumbered," Mason points out. "We have what, 12 fighters left? Most with minimal training." Jake's expression remains calculating. "We don't hit them head on. We need to be smarter." He turns to Elena. "What's their most valuable asset?" "There. Product, obviously. Drugs, weapons." Jake shakes his head. "What Richard said has been bothering me. There's something else. Something valuable enough to send professionals after me personally." A weather-beaten man in his 60s steps forward. Frank Dawson, former Border Patrol, now running the town's small medical clinic. "Might be their cash. Cartels need to move physical currency. Electronic transfers are too easily traced." Jake considers this. "How much are we talking?" "About?" Frank shrugs. "Millions, potentially. They can't exactly use banks." Jake turns to Mason. "Money would explain the security, but not why they'd want me alive." Mason frowns. "Unless..." Unless they think I know something, Jake finishes. The room falls silent as everyone processes the implications. Elena breaks the silence. Whatever it is, that warehouse is their vulnerability. Hit them there, you hurt their entire operation. Jake nods slowly, a plan forming. We need more firepower. Mason grins. I might have a solution for that. Remember Dominguez? Jake's eyebrows raise. He's still around. Running an auto shop in El Paso. Still has his connections. Jake turns to the group. All right, we have 3 objectives. First, recon the warehouse. Elena, you'll guide a small team across the border tonight. Second, we need supplies. Weapons, explosives, tactical gear. Mason will handle that. And third, Elena asks, Jake's eyes harden. We need to find out what Vasquez is really protecting. Frank, you've lived here longer than anyone. Has anything unusual come through town recently? Something valuable? Something worth killing for? Frank thinks for a moment. Nothing specific, but there've been rumors about special shipments. High security, moving at night, military-grade equipment. Jake absorbs this information. We move tonight. Small teams, minimal contact. He looks around the room. This isn't just about revenge anymore. We need to hit them hard enough that they never recover. As the group disperses to prepare, Elena approaches Jake privately. You didn't tell them everything, did you? What you're really thinking? Jake meets her gaze. What makes you say that? Your eyes. When Frank mentioned military equipment, something changed. Jake hesitates, then leads her outside where they can speak privately. Richards knew things about me, things he shouldn't have known. Like what? Details about my final mission. Classified. Details. Jake's expression darkens. Someone with access to military intelligence is working with Vasquez. That's what doesn't add up. Elena processes this. So this goes beyond a local cartel operation. Way beyond. Jake looks toward the border, just visible in the distance. And tonight we find out how far. Nightfall. Jake, Elena, and 2 others traverse the rugged terrain south of town, moving silently through desert scrub and rocky outcroppings. They wear dark clothing, faces blackened with camouflage paint. Each carries minimal equipment. Weapons, communications, night vision. Elena leads, navigating with practiced ease. There's a blind spot in border surveillance here. No camera coverage, minimal patrols. They cross without incident, slipping into Mexico like ghosts. The landscape changes subtly. The same desert, but somehow different. Foreign. Jake checks coordinates on a GPS unit. 2 miles southwest to the warehouse. They move methodically, avoiding roads and open ground. Elena points out cartel lookouts they need to circumvent. Jake is impressed by her field craft. She moves like someone with military training. Where did you learn to move like this? He whispers during a brief rest. She smiles faintly. My brother taught me. After his first tour, said it might save my life someday in cartel country. Her smile fades. Guess he was right. They continue toward the target. As they approach, lights become visible through the trees. A large complex, surrounded by fence, multiple buildings, vehicle depot. Armed guards patrol the perimeter. Jake signals the team to spread out, observing from different angles. Through his scope, he counts guards, notes security cameras, identifies blind spots. The operation is impressive. Professional, disciplined, more like a military installation than a drug warehouse. Elena crawls beside him. See the main building? That's where they process everything. Second floor has offices, likely their command center. Jake focuses on a separate, smaller structure set apart from the others. Unlike the main warehouse, this building has reinforced walls, heavy security doors, and twice as many guards. What's that building? He asks. Elena frowns. Not sure. It wasn't there last time I had intel on this place. Jake watches the patrol patterns around it. Whatever they're protecting, it's in there. They spend another hour gathering intelligence. Shift changes, guard rotations, vehicle movements. Jake notes everything meticulously, building a mental map of the operation. A truck convoy arrives, drawing their attention. 6 vehicles, heavily armed escorts. From their position, they watch as the trucks are unloaded. Crates moved with careful precision into the main warehouse. One smaller crate, carried by 4 men, is taken to the separate building under heavy guard. That's it, Jake whispers. Whatever's in that crate is what they're really protecting. Elena looks skeptical. Could just be high-value product. Pure cocaine, maybe. Jake shakes his head. Cartel wouldn't bring in contractors for drugs. This is something else. As they prepare to withdraw, a patrol unexpectedly changes route, heading directly toward their position. Jake signals for absolute stillness. The guards pass within feet of them, speaking quietly in Spanish. Elena listens intently. When they're gone, Jake looks at her questioningly. They're expecting someone important tomorrow night, she translates. Someone coming to inspect the merchandise. Jake processes this information. That's our window. When the VIP arrives, security will be focused on them. They begin their retreat, moving carefully back toward the border. As they cross into U.S. territory, Jake retrieves a satellite phone, dialing Mason. "We've got a target," he says simply. "How's your end?" Mason's voice comes through. "Got everything we need." Dominguez came through. "You wouldn't believe what he had in storage." "We move tomorrow night. There's a VIP visit happening. Might be our only chance." Elena watches Jake's face in the moonlight, noting the intensity in his eyes. "This is personal for you now, isn't it? Beyond the bar, beyond the town." Jake ends the call, meeting her gaze. "They made it personal when they brought in military contractors who knew about my past." He looks back toward the warehouse, barely, visible in the distance. Something bigger is happening here, and I'm going to find out what. The next day is a flurry of preparation. In an abandoned ranch house outside town, Jake and Mason lay out their arsenal. Military-grade weapons, explosives, tactical gear. The remaining townspeople who've joined their cause look on with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Jake addresses the group. "Tonight, we cross a line. Anyone not comfortable with that should leave now. No judgment." No one moves. Jake continues. "We hit them at midnight when their VIP visitor arrives. The plan has 3 phases. First team creates a diversion at the main gate. Second team targets their communications and power. Third team, Mason, Elena, and myself, goes after the high-value target in the secured building." He looks each person in the eye. "This won't be like before. These men won't hesitate to kill you. If you're captured..." He lets the implication hang. Frank speaks up. "We know the risks. We've lived under their shadow too long." Jake nods, appreciating their courage. "Once we have what we came for, we extract immediately. No heroics, no revenge killings. In and out." As the group breaks to prepare, Elena approaches Jake. "You still haven't told them what you suspect." Jake checks the action on an M4 rifle. "Because I'm not certain yet." "But you have a theory." Jake hesitates. The timing, the security, the military contractors with classified knowledge, all of it points to something beyond normal cartel business. He lowers his voice. "I think they've acquired military technology, possibly weapons." Elena's eyes widen. "From where?" "That's what I intend to find out." The day passes with final preparations. As sunset approaches, tension builds. People check and recheck weapons, rehearse movements, say quiet goodbyes. The gravity of what they're attempting weighs on everyone. Mason finds Jake alone, making final adjustments to his gear. "Just like Fallujah, huh?" Jake doesn't look up. "This is different." "Is it?" Mason sits beside him. Small unit, impossible odds, high-value target. Sounds familiar. Jake finally meets his friend's eyes. Fallujah went wrong. People died. Not your fault. I was the team leader. Everything was my fault. Jake's voice tightens. It's why I left, why I came here. Mason puts a hand on his shoulder. Those were orders from above. Bad intel, bad timing. And tonight, whose orders are these? Jake gestures toward the preparing fighters. I'm leading civilians into a cartel stronghold based on a hunch. A hunch from one of the best tactical minds I've ever known, Mason counters. These people trust you because you've earned it. Twice now, you've beaten the odds. Jake looks away. Everyone's luck runs out eventually. This isn't about luck. Mason stands. It's about skill, planning, and having something worth fighting for. He moves toward the door, then pauses. By the way, Elena was asking about you. She's outside, Hiki. Finds Elena sitting on the porch steps, staring at the sunset. She holds something in her hands, a small photograph worn around the edges. She doesn't look up as Jake sits beside her. My brother, last photo before his final deployment. She passes it to Jake. The image shows a young Marine in desert camo, smiling confidently. Jake studies it, feeling the familiar weight of command responsibility. He was a lot like you, Elena continues. Quiet, intense. He believed in what he was doing. She takes back the photo. Until his last tour. Something changed him. Jake remains silent, understanding all too well. The night before he left, he told me he'd seen things. Things that made him question everything. Elena's voice breaks slightly. 3 weeks later, we got the notification that he'd been killed. In action. Jake feels the conversation shifting into dangerous territory. I'm sorry. Elena turns to him, eyes intense. Before you showed up, I'd given up. Accepted that this town belonged to the cartel. That fighting back was impossible. She takes his hand. But now I see my brother was right. Some battles have to be fought, even when you can't win. Jake meets her gaze. Who says we can't win? The moment stretches between them, electric with unspoken possibilities. Slowly, Elena leans forward. Their lips meet in a kiss, gentle at first, then deepening with the urgency of people who might not see tomorrow. When they separate, Jake touches her face gently. We should get ready. Elena nods, a new determination in her eyes. Let's go make history. Midnight. The warehouse complex gleams under security lights, casting harsh shadows across the desert. Guards patrol the perimeter, alert but routine. Inside the main building, activity has increased. Preparations for the VIP arrival. A half-mile away, Jake and his force are in position. 17 fighters divided into 3 teams, armed and ready. Through night vision, Jake observes a convoy, approaching from the south. 3 black SUVs with diplomatic flags. Target incoming, he whispers into his radio. All teams, final positions. The convoy enters the main gate after security checks. Jake watches as it proceeds to the administrative building. From the center vehicle emerges a distinguished man, in an expensive suit, flanked by bodyguards. That's our cue, Jake signals. Team 1, execute. At the far eastern fence, explosions erupt. Carefully placed charges breach the perimeter, triggering alarms. Guards rush to respond, drawing attention away from the main complex. Team 2, go. The second team targets the facility's infrastructure, cutting power lines, disabling backup, generators, destroying the communications array. The warehouse plunges into darkness, emergency lights providing minimal illumination. In the confusion, Jake, Mason, and Elena move. They breach the fence at a predetermined blind spot, advancing quickly toward the secured building. The VIP visit has drawn security inward, leaving the perimeter vulnerable. They encounter minimal resistance. two guards easily neutralized with suppressed weapons. Jake leads them to the secured building, now protected by only 3 men due to the emergency elsewhere. Mason creates a distraction, drawing 2 guards away. Jake takes down the third with a silent knife strike. They breach the door using explosives charges, entering the darkened structure. Inside, they find what appears to be a high-tech storage facility. Temperature-controlled rooms, advanced security. Systems, computer terminals. Most is now offline due to the power outage. Whatever they're hiding, it's valuable, Mason whispers, scanning the area with his weapon. Elena gestures toward a reinforced door at the rear. There. That's where they took the special delivery yesterday. Jake examines the door. Heavy steel, electronic lock currently disabled by the power outage. Mason, can you bypass it? Mason grins. That's why you brought me. He begins working on the lock with specialized equipment. Jake and Elena secure the entrance, listening to the chaos outside as the diversionary attacks continue. Gunfire echoes across the compound. Jake checks his watch. 7 minutes since. Breach. They're on schedule. Got it, Mason announces as the door clicks open. They enter a climate-controlled vault. Inside, mounted on specialized racks, are sleek metal cases with military markings. Jake approaches one, opening it carefully. His expression changes to shock, then grim understanding. I was right. Inside, the case lies advanced military hardware. Weapon systems with U.S. military designations. Not just any weapons. Prototype. Systems, next-generation technology not yet deployed to regular forces. Mason whistles low. This is bleeding-edge stuff. Stealth targeting modules, advanced guidance systems. He examines another case. This isn't supposed to exist outside classified facilities. Jake photographs everything with a small camera. Now, we know why they sent contractors with military connections. This is an inside job. Someone's selling classified tech to the cartels. Elena stands guard at the door. We need to move. Security will regroup soon. Jake makes a quick decision. We're taking one as evidence. The smallest module. Mason, help me secure it. They prepare to extract when Elena's radio crackles. Team 1 taking heavy casualties. They've got reinforcements from somewhere. Jake's expression darkens. The VIP brought additional security. We need to move now. They secure the stolen module in a backpack and prepare to exit when they hear voices outside. Guards returning to check the secured building. Back way, Jake hisses, leading them toward a service corridor. They move swiftly through the darkened passageways, encountering 2 guards who are quickly neutralized. As they approach an exit, Elena stops suddenly. Listen, she whispers. Through the walls, they hear familiar voices. The VIP and his entourage, moving through an adjacent corridor. We need to know who's behind this, Jake decides. Cover me. Before they can protest, he moves to a ventilation grate that offers a view into the next room. Through it, he sees the VIP clearly for the first time. Jake's blood runs cold. He recognizes the man, Colonel William Stark, his former commanding officer from his SEAL days. The man who sent Jake's team on the mission that went catastrophically wrong. It can't be, Jake whispers. Mason joins him at the grate. Is that Stark? Jake confirms, his voice tight with suppressed rage. The mission that got my team killed. He was behind it, and now he's here, selling military secrets to cartels. Mason grabs his arm. Jake, we need to go. This is bigger than we thought. Jake remains frozen, watching Stark speak with cartel leaders, his mind racing with implications. Everything connects now. Why the contractors knew about him. Why they wanted him alive. Stark is tying up loose ends, eliminating witnesses to his treason. Elena tugs urgently at both men. Guards coming. We have seconds, not minutes. The need to survive overrides Jake's desire for immediate revenge. They move quickly to the exit, slipping outside just as alarmed shouts indicate their intrusion has been discovered. Across the compound, the diversionary teams are withdrawing under heavy fire. Jake radios emergency extraction orders to all units as they race toward their predetermined escape route. "This changes everything," Jake tells Mason as they run. "Stark saw me die in Afghanistan. Mission records show my entire team was killed. He doesn't know I survived. That's why he sent contractors to capture you, not kill you," Mason realizes. He needed to know what you remember, what evidence might exist. They reach the perimeter fence as alarms blare across the facility. Guards are mobilizing everywhere, but the confusion of multiple breaches works in their favor. Elena leads them through a drainage culvert that passes under the fence. They emerge on the other side, sprinting toward vehicles hidden a quarter-mile away. As they drive away, the warehouse compound receding in the distance, Jake stares at the stolen technology module. His expression is one of cold fury and grim determination. Stark betrayed everything. His country, his men. Jake's voice is deadly quiet, and he's been using Vasquez's cartel to distribute stolen military tech. Mason drives in tense silence for several minutes before asking, "What now? This is way beyond a local cartel problem. This is national security." Jake considers their options. "We can't go to local authorities. No way to know who's compromised. And Stark has the resources to bury this, and us, if we don't play this exactly right." Elena, tending to a minor wound on her arm, looks between them. "So, what's the plan?" Jake's eyes harden with resolve. "We take the fight directly to Vasquez and Stark. Cut off both heads of the snake." "That's suicide," Mason protests. "They'll have the entire compound on high alert now." "Not the compound," Jake clarifies. "Vasquez has a private estate 24 miles south of the border. If Stark is selling military tech, that's where the final transaction will happen. Away from the warehouse, minimal witnesses." Elena looks skeptical. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because it's what I would do." Jake checks the stolen module. "This is just a sample. The real shipment, the complete technology, will be handed over somewhere secure and private." As they drive back toward the border, Jake formulates a plan. It's audacious, possibly suicidal, but it's their only chance to expose the operation and survive. "We need to get this evidence to someone we can trust," he says, indicating the stolen tech. "Someone with enough authority to act on it," Mason thinks. "I might know someone. Joint Task Force commander I worked with in Yemen. Straight arrow, incorruptible. But reaching him won't be easy." "Make it happen," Jake directs. "Meanwhile, we prepare for the final assault." They cross back into U.S. territory as the first light of dawn appears on the horizon. Behind them, the cartel compound is still in chaos. Ahead lies an even greater challenge, confronting not just a cartel leader, but a traitor to the highest levels of military command. The resistance regroups at their fallback position, an abandoned ranch 10 miles from town. 4 men didn't return from the raid. Those who did are wounded, exhausted, but also energized by their success. Jake reveals what they discovered, though not the full personal connection to Stark. The group reacts with shock to the revelation that U.S. military technology is being sold to cartels. "This isn't just about our town anymore," Jake tells them. "This is about stopping a traitor from arming drug cartels with advanced weapons." Frank voices what others are thinking. "We're not soldiers, Jake. We've been lucky so far, but going after Vasquez at his home base? That's another level." Jake acknowledges the concern. "I'm not asking anyone else to make that crossing. This part is on me, Mason, and whoever volunteers. The rest of you have done enough." Elena steps forward immediately. "I'm going." One by one, others join. Not all, but enough to form a strike team. Jake looks at them with pride and concern. Civilians turned warriors by circumstance, willing to risk everything. "We move tonight," Jake decides. "Vasquez will be expecting us to lay low after the raid. We use that to our advantage. As the group disperses to rest and prepare, Mason approaches with news. Made contact with my JTF connection. He's skeptical but interested. Wants more proof. The tech we stole isn't enough? He needs confirmation of Stark's involvement. Photos, recordings, something concrete linking him directly to the sale. Jake nods grimly. Then that's what we'll get. Elena joins them, her expression troubled. Jake, can I speak with you? Privately. They move away from the others. Elena produces a worn photograph, different from the one of her brother. I found this in my brother's things after he died. She hands it to Jake. I never understood what it meant, until now. Jake stares at the image. A younger Colonel Stark standing with several men in civilian clothes against a desert backdrop. The location is unmistakably Afghanistan. Your brother, Jake says slowly. He was there when it happened. Elena nods. He was part of a Marine unit providing perimeter security for a classified operation. He never told me details, but he said he witnessed something that changed him. Something about American officers and local warlords. Jake's mind races, connecting. Pieces. Stark was running Black Ops using military resources to establish drug supply lines. Your brother witnessed it. And died 3 weeks later in a combat incident, Elena finishes bitterly. Jake hands back the photograph, his resolve hardening. Stark has been at this for years, using his position to build a private empire. The technology sale is just his retirement plan. This isn't just about justice anymore, Elena says quietly. It's about vengeance, for my brother, for your team. Jake doesn't deny it. Sometimes they're the same thing. As night approaches, the final preparations are made. Weapons checked, equipment secured, plans reviewed. Mason has provided detailed intelligence on Vasquez's estate. Security layout, personnel, possible locations for the technology handover. Jake addresses the strike team one last time before departure. We hit them at 200 hours. By then, the tech should be on site for the final verification before payment. We locate and secure evidence of Stark's involvement, then extract. The military will handle the rest. Frank raises a hand. And if things go wrong? Jake's expression is grim. Then we make sure Vasquez and Stark don't walk away either. The team moves out, a small convoy of nondescript vehicles heading south toward the border. Jake rides with Mason and Elena, reviewing mental maps of the target. One thing still bothers me, Mason says as they drive. Why here? Why this small town for an operation this big? Jake has been pondering the same question. Location, remote but accessible. Border proximity, minimal federal presence. There are dozens of towns that fit that description, Mason counters. Elena offers another perspective. What if it's not about the town? What if it's about what's nearby? Jake looks at her sharply. What do you mean? About 30 miles west, there's an abandoned mining complex, extensive underground facilities, completely off-grid. Jake and Mason exchange glances, the implications clear. A perfect location to store and test stolen military hardware away from prying eyes. The warehouse was just a transit point, Jake realizes. The real operation is at the mine. Their mission suddenly expands in scope and significance. Not just intercepting a single sale, but potentially uncovering a massive illegal weapons depot. We stick to the plan, Jake decides after consideration. We get proof of Stark's involvement first. Then we can deal with the bigger operation. They cross the border through Elena's secret route, approaching Vasquez's estate from the east where security is lightest. The compound comes into view, a sprawling hacienda surrounded by walls, guard towers, and electronic surveillance. Jake signals the team to deploy as planned, 3 groups with distinct objectives: security neutralization, evidence collection, and extraction support. Mason leads the first team to disable perimeter security. Elena joins Jake on the infiltration team. The third team establishes a covered extraction route. They move with precision born of training and desperation. The security team creates entry points by silently eliminating guards and disabling alarm systems. Jake and Elena penetrate the main house through a service entrance. Inside, they navigate darkened corridors, avoiding patrol routes identified in their intelligence. The house is large, opulent, a monument to cartel wealth and excess. They locate Vasquez's private office and begin searching for evidence. Jake accesses the computer while Elena checks physical files. Nothing directly linking Stark, Jake whispers after several tense minutes. But there are coded references to shipment locations. The mining facility is mentioned. Elena suddenly freezes, listening. Someone's coming. They hide as the office door opens. Vasquez enters with another man. Not Stark, but someone equally well-dressed and authoritative. They're speaking English. "The colonel assures me the final shipment will be delivered tomorrow," the unknown man says. "Once verification is complete, payment will be transferred as agreed." Vasquez appears nervous. After last night's breach, security has been increased. The colonel is taking unnecessary risks bringing the technology to the estate. "The demonstration must proceed as planned," the other man insists. "Our buyers are already en route." Jake and Elena exchange glances. Buyers. The operation is even larger than they suspected. The men exit, continuing their conversation down the hallway. Jake and Elena emerge from hiding. "We need to follow them," Jake decides. "Find out where this demonstration is happening." They trail the men at a safe distance, through the house and out to an attached structure that appears to be a converted garage or workshop. Guards stand at attention outside. Jake and Elena find an observation position in an adjacent building. Through a window, they watch as Vasquez, the unknown man, and several others gather around equipment cases being unloaded from a secure vehicle. Colonel Stark arrives minutes later, entering the workshop with the confidence of a man accustomed to command. Jake's jaw tightens at the sight of his former superior. Stark personally oversees the unpacking of what appears to be advanced weapons systems, sleek, modular components that Jake recognizes as next-generation targeting and communication equipment. "Those are prototype battlefield coordination systems," Jake whispers, "designed to integrate drone swarms with ground forces. Classified top secret." Elena takes photographs with a small camera as Stark demonstrates the equipment's capabilities to the assembled men. The evidence they need is accumulating. "Who's the other man?" Elena asks, indicating the well-dressed figure who arrived with Vasquez. Jake studies him. "Not military, possibly intelligence community or private contractor, a middleman for the buyers." Their observation is interrupted by Mason's voice on the radio. "Primary team, we have a situation. Additional vehicles approaching from the south, heavily armed." Jake checks his watch. "Early arrivals, the buyers Vasquez mentioned." "We need to extract now," Mason urges, "while we still have a clear route." Jake hesitates, watching the scene in the workshop. They have evidence, but not a complete picture of the operation's scope. 2 more minutes, he decides. "I need to see who these buyers are." The approaching vehicles enter the compound. Black SUVs with tinted windows, professional security. From the lead vehicle emerges a group of men in business attire. Clearly foreign. Their features and language suggest Middle Eastern origin. Jake's expression grows even more serious. This just went from bad to worse. Those are representatives from a hostile foreign power. Stark isn't just selling to cartels, he's selling to enemies of the state. He makes a quick decision, speaking urgently into his radio. "All teams, prepare for immediate extraction. We have what we need." As they begin to withdraw, a guard unexpectedly enters their observation post. Elena reacts instantly, taking him down with a silent chokehold. But in the struggle, equipment is knocked over, creating noise. Outside, another guard investigates the disturbance. Jake signals Elena to continue their extraction while he creates a diversion. Meet at the rally point. He whispers, "Get that evidence out. No. Matter what." Before she can protest, Jake moves to draw attention away from her escape route. He deliberately triggers an alarm, then engages the responding guards with suppressed weapons fire. The compound erupts into chaos. Security forces converge on Jake's position while he conducts a fighting withdrawal, leading them away from Elena's escape route. Mason's team provides covering fire from their positions, creating additional confusion. The buyers and their security personnel retreat to their vehicles, the demonstration disrupted. Jake fights his way toward the extraction point, but finds his primary route blocked by Vasquez's men. He's forced to detour through the main house, engaging in close-quarters combat through opulent rooms and corridors. In the central courtyard, he encounters Vasquez himself, fleeing with security. Their eyes meet across the space, recognition and hatred flashing between them. Vasquez draws a pistol, firing wildly as Jake dives for cover. "Carter!" Vasquez shouts, advancing. "You're a dead man. You hear me? Dead!" Jake responds with precise fire, wounding Vasquez in the shoulder. The cartel leader falls back, his security dragging him to safety. Continuing toward extraction, Jake rounds a corner and comes face to face with Colonel Stark. The older man stops short, genuine shock on his face as he recognizes Jake. "Lieutenant Carter," Stark says, recovering quickly. "Back from the dead. I should have known." Jake keeps his weapon trained on his former commander. "It's over, Colonel. We have everything. The tech, the buyers, all of it." Stark's expression shifts to one of cold calculation. "Do you really think you can expose this? Do you have any idea how high this goes? Who's involved?" "High enough that they'll want to bury it," Jake acknowledges. "But first they'll bury you." Stark draws his sidearm with surprising speed. "You always were a good soldier, Carter, but a poor judge of the bigger picture." They fire simultaneously. Jake feels the burn of a bullet grazing his side as he dives aside. His own shot catches Stark in the chest, sending the colonel staggering backward. Stark collapses against a wall, blood spreading across his immaculate uniform. He looks at Jake with a mixture of pain and grudging respect. "You don't understand what you've done?" Stark gasps. "The people behind this, they won't stop." Jake approaches cautiously, weapon ready. "Who's behind it? Give me names." Stark coughs, blood speckling his lips. "You think this is about money? It's about power, influence, a new world order." His voice weakens. "They're already inside every level of government. Military, intelligence. You can't fight them." "Watch me," Jake says grimly. Stark manages a final, bloody smile. "They said you were good. Best I ever commanded. Should have made sure you died in Afghanistan." His eyes go blank as death claims him. Jake retrieves Stark's phone and identification, then continues toward extraction as gunfire intensifies across the compound. He reaches the predetermined rally point to find Mason waiting with the remaining team members. "Elena?" Jake asks immediately. "Already extracted with the evidence," Mason confirms. "Secondary team got her across the border 10 minutes ago." Relief floods Jake, but there's no time to savor it. They fight their way off the estate as Vasquez's remaining forces regroup. The extraction is messy, violent, but ultimately successful. By dawn, they're back across the border, regrouping at their safe house. Elena rushes to Jake as he arrives, embracing him fiercely. 3 days after the raid on Vasquez's estate, Jake stands atop a rocky outcrop overlooking the town. The rising sun paints the desert landscape in gold and crimson. In the distance, military vehicles move along the highway, a joint task force mobilized by Mason's contact after receiving their evidence. Jake watches as the convoy heads toward the abandoned mining facility where Stark's operation was headquartered. The scale of the response tells him they've taken the threat seriously. Black SUVs with government plates, tactical teams in unmarked vehicles, even helicopter support. Mason climbs up beside him, offering a thermos of coffee. Quite a sight, isn't it? Jake accepts the coffee silently. JTF Commander Davies sends his regards, Mason continues. Says the intelligence we provided has opened up a massive investigation. Multiple agencies involved now. Jake sips the coffee, his expression unreadable. And Vasquez? No confirmed kill, but he's wounded and on the run. His organization is in chaos. Between the warehouse raid and the estate assault, they've lost most of their senior leadership. They'll rebuild, Jake says flatly. Cartels always do. Mason studies his friend. Maybe, but not here. Not anymore. He gestures toward the town below. You did that. You gave these people back their home. Jake's gaze drifts to the charred remains of his bar, still visible even from this distance. At what cost? 7 dead. 4 more wounded who will recover. Against a cartel and a rogue military operation? I'd call that a miracle. Jake finally turns to Mason. And Stark's warning about people higher up. Mason's expression grows serious. Davies is looking into it. Carefully, Stark wasn't working alone. The technology theft required high-level access, coordination across multiple facilities, which means there are others who will want this buried, Jake concludes. Most likely, but the evidence is too substantial to disappear completely, especially with foreign buyers involved. Mason checks his watch. Speaking of which, I should get down there. They want my formal statement. Jake doesn't move to join him. I'll be along later. Mason hesitates. Jake, you should know. There will be questions about your involvement, your methods. I expected that. Davies suggested you might want to consider relocating, at least until things settle. Mason puts a hand on Jake's shoulder. You've made some powerful enemies. Jake looks out over the landscape again. I've been running for 5 years, Mason. I'm done with that. Mason sighs, recognizing the immovable resolve in his friend's voice. Well, whatever comes next, you won't face it alone. He starts back down the path, then stops. Elena's looking for you, by the way. Said it was important. Jake watches Mason descend before turning back to the view. The town below is beginning to wake up. Business is opening. People moving about with a new confidence. For the first time in years, they walk without fear of cartel violence. He thinks about Stark's dying words, about shadowy power structures beyond his reach. The victory feels incomplete, tainted by the knowledge that the true architects might never face justice. After a while, he hears footsteps approaching. Elena joins him on the outcrop, wrapped in a light jacket against the morning chill. Thought I'd find you up here, she says, becoming quite the habit. Jake offers her the thermos. She accepts, their fingers brushing. Mason says you're planning to stay, she continues after a sip. Does that surprise you? Elena studies his profile. A little. Most men who've been through what you have would want to put it behind them. And go where? Jake asks quietly. This is the first place that's felt like home since... He doesn't finish the thought. Since Afghanistan, she completes for him. Since you lost your team. Jake turns to her, surprised. How much did Mason tell you? Enough. The rest I figured out myself. She steps closer. You were the sole survivor of a mission gone wrong. A mission Stark commanded. Jake looks away. It wasn't just a mission failure. It was a betrayal. Stark fed us bad intelligence, sent us into a trap to eliminate witnesses to his operation. And you've been hiding ever since, believing you failed your men. Jake's jaw tightens. I did fail. Them. Elena touches his face, turning it toward her. No, Stark failed you. All of you. Her eyes are intense, determined. And now you've brought him to justice. For your men. For my brother. For everyone he sacrificed. Jake wants to believe her, but the weight of command responsibility still presses on him. It doesn't bring them back. No, she agrees softly. But maybe it lets them rest, and maybe it lets you live again. The moment stretches between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Elena finally breaks the silence. I came to show you something. She pulls a folded document from her jacket. Land deed to your bar property, or what's left of it. Jake takes it, confused. Why are you showing me this? Because the town council met this morning. They're offering to help rebuild it. Everyone's contributing what they can. Materials, labor, funds. Jake stares at the document, genuinely surprised. Why would they do that? Because you fought for them when no one else would. Elena looks down at the town. And because they want you to. Stay. The gesture touches Jake deeply, though he masks it with practicality. There's nothing left to rebuild, just ashes. So we start fresh. Build something better. Elena's voice grows passionate. This town is changing, Jake. For the first time in years, people are making plans, thinking about the future. They're talking about community watch programs, better coordination with Border Patrol, rebuilding businesses the cartel shut down. Jake considers this, feeling something unfamiliar stirring within him, a sense of purpose beyond survival or revenge. And what about you? He asks finally. What are your plans? Elena smiles, a hint of challenge in her eyes. That depends. On what? On whether there's a reason to stay. The implication hangs between them. Jake studies her face. The strength, the determination, the invitation in her gaze. I'm not the man I was before all this, he warns her quietly. Good, she replies, simply. That man was hiding. This one fights. Jake almost smiles. Almost. The moment is interrupted by the distant sound of vehicles approaching. They both turn to see two black SUVs making their way up the road toward town. Government, Jake says, recognizing the purposeful way they move. Probably FBI or Homeland Security. Elena tenses. Are they coming for you? Most likely. Jake doesn't seem concerned. Standard procedure after something like this. And what will you tell them? Jake considers the question. The truth, or most of it. They watch as the vehicles enter the town, stopping near the town square. Men in suits emerge, speaking with local deputies. You should go down there, Elena suggests. On your terms, not theirs. Jake nods but makes no immediate move to leave. Instead, he gestures toward the remains of his bar. If we were to rebuild, it would need to be different. Better. Elena follows his gaze. How so? Stronger construction, better sight lines, security features disguised as architectural elements. He sketches possibilities in the air with his hands. A community space, not just a bar, somewhere people can gather, organize. Elena smiles, recognizing what he's doing, planning for a future here. Sounds like you've given this some thought. Just now, he admits. His eyes meet hers. It's been a while since I thought beyond the next day. Below, the government agents are asking directions, likely looking for him. Jake knows he can't avoid this confrontation, but for the first time in years, he's not looking to escape. I should go deal with them, he says finally. Elena nods. I'll come with you. Jake starts to protest, then reconsiders. All right, they descend together, walking back toward town side by side. As they approach, Jake sees familiar faces emerging from businesses and homes. Frank from the medical clinic, shopkeepers who joined the resistance, ordinary people who found extraordinary courage. They nod to Jake respectfully, gratefully, not just neighbors now, but comrades who've shared the crucible of combat and survived. The government agents spot Jake, moving to intercept him. Their expressions are professionally neutral, impossible to read. "Mr. Carter?" the lead agent asks. Jake steps forward. "That's me, Special Agent Wilson, FBI." He shows credentials. "We'd like to ask you some questions about recent events in this area." Jake nods calmly. "I expected you'd be coming." Wilson glances at Elena. "Privately, if possible." Jake doesn't move. "Anything you need to ask me, you can ask in front of Ms. Martinez. She's been part of everything that's happened here." Wilson considers this, then nods reluctantly. "Very well. Perhaps we could use the sheriff's office." As they walk toward the building, more townspeople emerge, watching the proceedings with concern. Jake notices their protective postures, their readiness to intervene if necessary. A community standing together. Inside the sheriff's office, Wilson and his partner set up recording equipment. The questioning begins professionally but intensifies quickly. "We understand you led an armed civilian group against cartel operations," Wilson states. "That's vigilante action, Mr. Carter. Potentially serious charges." Jake remains composed. "We defended our town against criminal elements when law enforcement was unable or unwilling to do so." "And the incursion into Mexico? The assault on Hector Vasquez's private residence? That goes well beyond self-defense." Jake leans forward. "That operation uncovered a high-level military officer selling classified technology to foreign powers. I'd call that a service to national security." Wilson's expression remains stern, but his eyes betray interest. "So, you're claiming your actions were justified as counterterrorism?" "I'm not claiming anything. The evidence speaks for itself." Jake holds the agent's gaze. "Colonel Stark's operation presented a clear and present danger to the United States. We took action when no one else would," Elena interjects. "The town submitted multiple requests for federal assistance over the past year. All were denied or ignored." Wilson's partner checks something on a tablet. "We have no record of such requests." "Convenient," Elena replies coldly. The interrogation continues for hours. Jake provides details selectively, protecting his people while emphasizing the threat Stark represented. Through it all, he maintains the calm, authoritative demeanor of a military commander. Finally, Wilson sighs, turning off the recording equipment. "Off the record, Mr. Carter. You've stirred up a hornet's nest. This investigation involves multiple agencies, international boundaries, and potentially high-level government corruption." Jake says nothing, waiting. "The fact is," Wilson continues reluctantly, "your actions, while technically illegal, have exposed a significant national security breach. That complicates things." Jake allows himself a small smile. "I imagine it does." Wilson closes his notebook. "For now, you're not under arrest, but don't leave town. This investigation is ongoing and we'll have more questions." Jake nods, unsurprised. "We'll be here." As the agents prepare to leave, Wilson pauses. "One more thing, Mr. Carter. My colleague and I served in Iraq. We've seen what happens when good people don't stand up to evil." He offers his hand. "Not everyone in government is corrupt. Remember that." Jake shakes the offered hand, a silent understanding passing between them. After the agents depart, Elena exhales deeply. That went better than expected. For now, Jake cautions. "This isn't over. Stark was right about one thing. There are powerful people involved who will want this buried. So what do we do?" Jake considers the question carefully. "We prepare, we stay vigilant, and we rebuild." 1 month later, construction on the new establishment is well underway. The townspeople have rallied around the project, transforming it from a simple bar, rebuilding, into a community effort. Jake oversees the work, his military precision evident in every aspect of the design. Where once stood a rundown bar, now rises a more substantial structure, part gathering place, part community center, built with defense in mind, though few would recognize it as such. Mason has stayed, taking a more active role than anyone expected. His connections have proven valuable, bringing resources and information the town desperately needed. Elena has emerged as a community leader, organizing neighborhood watch programs, coordinating with legitimate law enforcement, giving the townspeople a voice they lacked before. The cartel's presence has diminished significantly. With Vasquez wounded and in hiding, his organization fractured, their grip on the region has weakened. Other criminal elements have attempted to fill the vacuum, but find the town no longer easy prey. Jake stands amidst the construction, checking plans against progress when Elena joins him. "The roof trusses arrived," she announces, "and Frank got the medical supplies you requested." Jake nods, making a note. "Good. We'll need a secure storage area for those." Elena studies him fondly. "You know, most people would just rebuild a bar. Maybe add a pool table or a nicer TV. You're building a fortress." "Not a fortress," Jake corrects. "A haven. There's a difference." She smiles at the distinction. "Either way, it's impressive. The whole town's talking about it." Jake looks around. At the workers. Carpenters, electricians, ordinary citizens contributing their time and skills. Many were part of the resistance against the cartel. The shared experience has forged bonds that transcend usual social barriers. "It's not just my project anymore," he acknowledges. Elena follows his gaze. "No, it's not." She touches his arm. "They're calling it The Last Stand." Jake raises an eyebrow. "Bit dramatic, isn't it?" "I like it," she declares. "It represents what happened here. What you started." Jake is about to respond when Mason approaches, expression serious. "Jake, we've got visitors." They turn to see a black SUV parked at the edge of the construction site. A man in a suit stands beside it, watching them. "Government?" Elena asks, tensing. Mason shakes his head. "Not exactly. That's Commander Davies, my JTF contact." Jake hands his clipboard to a worker and walks toward the visitor, Mason and Elena flanking him. As they approach, Davies steps forward to meet them. "Lieutenant Carter," he greets Jake formally. "Good to finally meet in person." They shake hands, sizing each other up with the mutual respect of professional warriors. "Commander," Jake acknowledges. "I thought you'd send Wilson for any follow-up questions." "This isn't about the investigation, at least not directly." Davies glances at the construction site. "Is there somewhere we can talk privately?" Jake leads them to a temporary office set up in a shipping container. Inside, construction plans cover one wall, while another displays maps of the region with marked cartel activity. Davies studies the maps with professional interest. Impressive intelligence gathering. "We've had to be thorough," Jake explains simply. Davies turns to face them. "I'll get straight to the point. The evidence you provided has opened up a significant investigation into corruption within military and intelligence communities. Colonel Stark wasn't acting alone." "We suspected as much," Mason confirms. "What you may not have suspected is the scale." Davies' expression is grim. "We're looking at a network spanning multiple agencies, possibly even congressional involvement. People selling not just technology, but influence, intelligence, access." Jake absorbs this soberly. "And you're telling us this why?" Davies hesitates, choosing his words carefully. "Because you're in danger, all of you. What you uncovered, it's just the tip of the iceberg. And there are people who will go to extraordinary lengths to ensure the rest stays buried." Elena steps forward. "Are you saying the government won't protect us, even after what we've exposed?" "I'm saying that elements within the government may actively work against you." Davies looks directly at Jake. "They know who you are now, Carter. Your history, your training. They consider you a significant threat. Jake processes this unsurprised but concerned for the others involved. What are our options? Officially, I'm here to offer relocation. New identities, new start somewhere far from here. Davies gestures toward the window toward the town beyond. Unofficially, I think you're already building your response. Jake follows his gaze to the construction site. This isn't just about defense, isn't it? Davies challenges. You're creating a stronghold in a strategic border location, gathering intelligence, training locals, establishing a power base, Mason interjects, for protection, not expansion. The intention matters less than the perception, Davies counters. From certain perspectives, you're establishing a paramilitary presence in a sensitive region. Jake studies Davies carefully. You didn't come here just to warn us. Davies smiles slightly, recognizing he's dealing with a perceptive opponent. No, I came to propose an arrangement. What kind of arrangement? Elena asks suspiciously. Unofficial one. Davies leans forward. My task force operates with significant autonomy. We track cross-border threats, terrorist financing, weapons trafficking, the kind of operations Stark was involved in. Jake begins to understand. You want informants. I want allies, Davies corrects. People who know the terrain, the players, the patterns. People who've proven they can get results. Mason eyes his former colleague skeptically. In exchange for what? Protection, resources, intelligence, and, most importantly, legitimacy. Davies looks directly at Jake. What you've built here doesn't have to exist in opposition to government authority. It can complement it. The offer hangs in the air, complex, in its implications. Jake considers it from all angles, weighing risks and benefits. And if we refuse, he asks finally. Davies shrugs. Then I wish you luck. You've made powerful enemies. Sooner or later, they'll move against you. Elena glances at Jake, concern evident in her expression. Jake meets her eyes briefly, a silent communication passing between them. We'll need to discuss this, Jake tells Davies. With everyone involved, Davies nods. Of course, I'll be in. Town until tomorrow. He moves toward the door, then pauses. For what it's worth, Carter, what you did here, it was extraordinary. Few men would have had the courage to stand against those odds. After Davies leaves, the three remain in thoughtful silence. Can we trust him? Elena asks finally. Mason considers. Davies has a reputation for integrity, but even the best intentions can be compromised. Jake moves to the maps on the wall, studying the marked cartel territories. Whether we trust him or not, he's right about one thing. We've made enemies who won't forget or forgive. So, what's the play? Mason asks. Jake turns to face them. We hear him out, consider his offer, but regardless of what we decide about Davies, we continue building what we've started here. Elena steps closer to the maps. And what exactly is that? What are we building, Jake? Jake looks at the construction site visible through the window, then back to the regional maps. His expression holds a clarity of purpose that's been absent for years. A foundation, he says simply, for whatever comes next. 3 months later, The Last Stand opens its doors. The building bears little resemblance to the original bar. Larger, more substantial, with an architecture that manages to be both welcoming and defensible. The main space serves as a bar and restaurant, but other areas fulfill different functions. Community meeting rooms, a medical station supervised by Frank, even modest guest accommodations. Throughout the design, Jake's military background is evident in subtle security features and strategic layouts. The opening night draws the entire town. People who fought alongside Jake mingle with those who initially doubted him. There's a sense of celebration, but also of vigilant pride, a community that has reclaimed its future. Jake moves through the crowd, accepting congratulations with awkward grace. He's still uncomfortable with his status as the town's defender, but he's learning to accept it. Mason tends bar, already a favorite with the locals for his stories and easy manner. He catches Jake's eye across the room, raising a glass in salute. Outside, on the building's rooftop terrace, Jake finds Elena gazing toward the border, visible as a distant line in the moonlight. She turns as he approaches. "Quite a turnout," he comments, joining her at the railing. "It's more than just an opening," she replies. "It's a statement that we're here to stay." Jake nods, understanding. "Davies called today, said his offer still stands." Elena studies his face. "And?" "I told him we're considering our options." Jake looks out toward the border. "But that we're not going anywhere." Elena smiles, pleased by his use of "we," the subtle confirmation that he's committed not just to the place, but to the people, to her. The cartel's regrouping, she mentions. New leadership stepping in to replace Vasquez. "I know. We're monitoring. It. And the other threat? The people behind Stark?" Jake's expression hardens slightly. "No direct moves yet, but they're watching, assessing. Do you think they'll come for us?" Jake considers the question carefully. "Eventually, when they think we've let our guard down." Elena shivers slightly, not from cold but from the weight of constant vigilance. Jake notices, moving closer beside, her. "Second thoughts?" he asks quietly. She shakes her head firmly. "No, I chose this. We all did." Below them, laughter and music spill from the open doors. The sounds of a community alive, vibrant despite the shadows that linger at its edges. "Besides," Elena continues, "we're not alone anymore. Davies may have ulterior motives, but his support provides some protection." Jake nods, acknowledging the pragmatic alliance they've formed with the task force commander. "And we have something they don't." "What's that?" "Something worth fighting for." Jake looks at the town spread below them, then back to Elena. "A home." The moment stretches between them, filled with unspoken emotion. Elena moves closer, her hand finding his on the railing. "Still not much for words, are you?" Jake's lips quirk in a rare, small smile. "Actions matter more." In the distance, headlights appear on the highway approaching town, another convoy of government vehicles, likely Davies people with new intelligence or requests. The war continues, if more quietly now. Jake watches the approaching lights with the calm readiness of a soldier who knows the battle is never truly over. But for the first time in years, he faces that reality without despair. Elena follows his gaze. "Duty calls." "Always does," Jake acknowledges, but makes no immediate move to leave. Instead, he turns to her fully. "But some things are worth coming back to." The implication isn't lost on Elena. Her expression softens as Jake gently pulls her closer. Their kiss is unhurried, a promise rather than a farewell. When they finally part, Jake looks once more at the town below, at the life he never expected to find. His expression holds the quiet resolve of a man who has found his purpose again. "Let's go," he says simply. Together, they descend to meet whatever comes next, not just as survivors, but as defenders of the home they've reclaimed. The last stand has become a new beginning.